States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Krista, we call roll.
Heidi Larson. Gary Kepley.
Here.
Ashley Overton. Here. Susan Braun.
Here.
John Hedges. Erica
He's going to be joining us in a little bit.
Weaver. Here. Michelle Skidmore. Here.
Okay, Dustin, you had a birthday?
Happy birthday!
Callie's birthday was yesterday.
Stare at it.
I think
30.
Yes.
30.
Stephanie's so old.
30.
Growing up.
Our babies are growing. Item 2, reception of visitors. We don't have any agenda. Any non-agenda visitors?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 3, consent agenda for board action. 3.1, financial payment of bills. 3.18, presentation of the bills for approval. Mr. Showman, do you have to say anything or?
No, just the normal approval,
Okay, I need a motion and a second.
Motion. Second.
Susie, any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 4, reports and recommendations of the business manager. Now, Mr. Sherman.
Okay. All right, first of all, we need a motion and a second to go into a budget hearing.
Motion.
Ashley and Erica. I write this down just in case she'll call me later.
You can use me anytime.
Any questions? I need a roll call vote on that, please.
Overton. Yes. Braun.
Yes.
Weaver. Yes. Kepley.
Yes.
Skidmore.
Yes.
Okay, so by law, we have to do all that because you have to have a budget hearing before you can actually approve the budget. Up here on the screen, you can see what the budget is, and the one that we're looking to approve is on the right-hand side, kind of the greenish color. The original budget that we did in September, which is totally changed, that I'll go into the reasons here in a little bit, is on the left-hand side. Just to go over some of the things here, you can see the revenues exceed the expenses by almost $3 million. There are some funds, one fund in particular is in the negative, but because of all the other funds taking care of it, we do have a balanced budget. Assuming you approve this budget, I'll send it in this afternoon to the state, and it'll show that we have a balanced budget, and it's all itemized with that. But some of the reasoning behind why some of the numbers have changed, in some of the things, it's a good thing because they changed. We got more money in some account and some funds. Other funds we didn't, but grand all overall scheme, you can see we went up significantly in both the revenue and the expenses. So the first thing on the revenue side of things, good. The education fund, early property tax money came in on June 24th, so less than 6 days ago, about 6 days ago. We actually received a little bit more, 1.1 million more than we had anticipated. We typically budget 2.3 million in that. We call it NYA, early next year's extension, because we get that obviously before June 30th. Sometimes we count on that, sometimes we don't. The last 3 years we have budgeted the 2.3 million. This year and last year we got close, a little bit over 3 million. So it may be trending upward to do that. But in the years that I've done this, we went from as low as getting 0 to as high as getting $7 million. So that's why this last week is like a circus around here, because we're counting on 2.3, we may get 0.
John has joined the meeting.
Okay, we may get 0.
Let me just for clarification, John, can you state your name and that you're attending virtually and your reason for not being able to attend in person, please?
Yes, John Hedges, can you hear me okay?
You can. And John, why are you unable to be here in person?
I am currently at the courthouse in a jury trial, and they have booked for lunch recess. And I don't have enough time to get there and back before it resumes.
You can vote and do everything virtually as long as you meet one of the 3 criteria, and that is work related.
So getting back to this, we've been anywhere from $0 to $7 million. The reason why we budgeted 2.3 is because historically, that's what its average had been over the past 3 years. We got 1.1 million more than that throughout the entire budget. Some of the early childhood grant as well as title grant money that we budgeted for back in September didn't appear. I'm talking about the Ed Fund now. The same holds true for some of the special education money that was projected as revenue in the original budget wasn't realized. And then the O&M fund, this one went up quite a bit, and it happened, I made some phone calls throughout the state, and it happened to other school districts as well. We actually got almost twice as much more in CPPRT money than we budgeted for. Other districts were the same way. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it happened throughout the state, and it was something to do with the way that the state realized the CPPRT money and then distributed that to the school district. So that's a good thing. But again, that was just in the O&M fund. I can't put that money in the Ed fund. I can't put it anywhere except for 2 places, O&M and IMRF. And the board, I think it was either last month or 2 months ago, does a resolution that we can put so much money by law into IMRF and Social Security. The rest of it goes in to this O&M fund. So that one went up on the revenue side. One of the major components of the ESSERS grant for some of the payment for the lift building across the street was realized in this year, which ends at midnight tonight, instead of going over to next year. So that caused both revenue and expenses to increase in the O&M fund. Moving on to the debt fund. After the original budget was adopted, I think it was maybe in December or January, I'm not quite sure, our auditor recommended that we do a repayment from the debt fund to the O&M fund. To the debt fund from the O&M fund, the amount of a little bit over $1 million. That was an interfund loan that we had to repay. Board took action on that and we did that. So the revenue to O&M increased and to the debt fund increased, and there was expense to the O&M. Capital fund, this is a big one. The county schools facility tax, or the sales tax, came in almost $850,000 more than we had anticipated. That's a good thing. By law, that can only go into 3 funds. You can see those up here, O&M, the debt fund, and capital fund. We put the major portion into the capital fund because of the projects going on at the high school and the projects going on across the street, and some smaller projects throughout the district. When I say smaller, it's still 6 figures, but compared to those 2, it's smaller. So the expense side of things, the expense side of the budget is much closer to the original budget. On a $61 million budget, we were right at 1.1% of what we anticipated back in September. I think that's pretty good. As was already stated that I said before, a lot of the building projects are going faster, progressing faster than we had originally anticipated. By that I mean that we thought it would be more spent in 23 than in 22. That's not the case, especially with some of the stuff going on at the high school and with the lift building. So those expenses were incurred. Now, if somebody were asking me, well, how come you presented such a big number when we did this back in May when I presented the tentative amended budget? I had to anticipate that we were going to expend it all by today, because you just never know. We gave the opportunity for the vendors, the contractors at both sites, if they wanted to send me bills that could be paid today in the accounts payable, that they could. They didn't, which is great, but it just deferred that expense from today to literally tomorrow. And then right now, unless anybody has any questions, and this is the time to ask the questions, we need a motion and a second to close the budget hearing. But you can, if you have questions, please ask.
I just have a clarifying question. So when you presented in May, it wasn't that you were inflating anything, you were just anticipating that in the event that the vendors presented bills that money would have been allotted for so that we could make those payments.
Absolutely.
And that money, those bills are still pending, but they'll be considered in the next fiscal year, which starts at 12:01 a.m.
Right.
So it's not that you were moving anything, you were just preparing for
Right.
those bills to be presented and paid in a timely fashion.
Yeah,
But they have
that's
come in today.
Great explanation. That's exactly right.
Thank
That's
you.
exactly right. And obviously, to be the most conservative, we overestimate the expenses and we underestimate the revenue, but you're right on, yeah.
I have a question, and that is the high school roof complete now?
Roof?
You remember how we were working on the roof for the high school, weren't we?
Yeah, last year, we had,
Yeah.
we had some roof pieces, we've got some additional roof work that we're doing, but nothing.
Good, because,
Nothing outside of the scope that would require the bidding process.
of course. We took a tour, it was my class reunion, and it looked like there were leaks, and that's the only reason I was there.
Yeah, and some of those are due more to the rooftop units, the HVAC units that are on top of the roof, more so than the roof, but it's where those would obviously connect.
Got it.
Yeah.
When I was a student there, we needed a lifeguard on duty. Because of the leaks. Yeah.
Nothing like that.
I know this isn't about the budget, but about that seal, weren't you guys gonna work on something for a seal around that to try and make it better, or try to come up with a solution?
We're in the process.
Okay.
We don't have an exact science to it yet, but
So that's in the works.
it
Yeah,
is.
so the air handling unit manufacturer carrier has discontinued the seals that actually would prevent that from occurring.
Oh, of course.
That's the difficulty versus I guess the ultimate replacement, which get into Tom's point about six-figure amounts, we would have to completely replace those air handling units, which would get quite significant. So
Okay.
we're continuing to work through that and hopefully find some solutions in the short term. I do want to point out, excuse me, if the board has any other questions for Tom before we vote, I would like to point out one thing here, so don't mean to interject. That sales tax piece, it's significant. And again, to the credit of this board and boards before this, the board abated property tax dollars in December of 2016 in lieu of this passing. And so these dollars that are coming not only to our district, but to districts throughout the county are significant to make improvements. And there's been some questions from this board at certain times when Tom's presented additional expenses. For example, one I recall has to do with the elevator modernizations that are occurring over at Lyft. And at that time, Tom shared with the board that we feel confident based upon how this was tracking that we would see those dollars come in to be able to pay that. So I just want to point out and appreciate the trust of this board for us to be able to move forward with that back in December, that those dollars came in even higher in revenue than what we were anticipating, not only in the budget, but also including what we would expend on that project as well. So
Very good.
appreciate that.
So I need a motion,
Second.
Gary and Erica. Any questions?
This is just to close the hearing.
This is closing the hearing. Would you call roll?
Ron,
Yes.
Hedges,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Kepley,
Yes.
Overton. Yes. Skidmore.
Yes.
So then 4.2 is actually the vote to approve the budget. That's the yellowish green color here that you're approving. Revenues, 64.7 million, expenses, 61.8 million. It is a balanced budget, and I would recommend that you approve it.
Motion and a second?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
I'm gonna go with Erica and Ashley on that. Any questions? Please call roll.
Hedges,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Kepley.
Yes.
Overton.
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Skidmore.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 5, reports and recommendations of the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Dr. Scotzi.
Thank you so much. The board has before them the June 30th, 2022 personnel report. Presented as we go through item 5.1A, certified resignation. Hate to see this individual go. Kim Bloomquist, longtime active middle school math instructor that is moving back home. Wish her the best of luck. She served our district about 20 years at our students. And so wonderful individual in her district. So wish her well. Continuing 5.1B, some certified appointments. Ashley Wisher, Manchester Middle School Special Ed teacher, effective 22-23 school year. And Kaylee Basham, Manchester High School graduate, looking to substitute teach for us in the 22-23 school year. Classified resignation. Again, Wayne Abbots, who is a district custodian for us up at Humboldt most recently. As we're working through and those facilities are moving forward, he's taking employment to stay in that facility with easy. So we'll miss Wayne. He's done a wonderful job for us as well. And wishing him luck. He's resigning effective June 30th, 2022. Then we have Tabitha Drummond, Riddle Elementary School supervisor, effective immediately. He's resigning. Rayleigh Hawkins, Western Avenue, resigns Riddle Elementary School supervisor, effective immediately. You're seeing me trying to touch the screen, aren't you? So stay away from that. Classified appointments as we continue. Amy Kinnaman, Macon High School paraprofessional, effective 22-23 school year. Pamela Holster, substitute paraprofessional, effective 22-23 school year. And Becky Stroud, substitute supervisor, effective 22-23 school year. Extracurricular assignments. Again, this is just a continuation of all the assignments as we move forward. The TBAs are to be assigned or determined at this point, which you'll see some of those on the addendum as we go through. List. Look at that. We have many people that do many things outside just their teaching assignments in our district. In addition, the addendum report as presented. Sarah Gulick, I'm saying that right, elementary school supervisor, effective immediately. And then classified appointments. She's resigning, I should say. Classified appointments as we continue. Christy Gillis, Oakville Elementary School supervisor, effective 22-23 school year. Megan Isri, Mattoon High School paraprofessional, effective 22-23 school year. And Stark, Williams Elementary School supervisor, effective 22-23 school year. McKenna Tabor, paraprofessional, effective 22-23 school year. Some extracurricular resignations. Haley Kronick is resigning as National High School System volleyball coach immediately. And then some assignments. James Miller had to announce Mattoon High School cross-country coach, effective for the 22-23 school year. And then Courtney St. John as Mattoon High School flying corporal coach, effective for the 22-23 school year. Are there any questions?
Just want to comment, Ashley Wishart's a high school, Mattoon High School
Yes,
graduate.
yes, she is as well. Yeah. There's a lot more of them, aren't there?
It's nice to see.
That's right.
The older we get.
Yeah, that's right. Therefore, I recommend the board accept the personnel report as presented.
Have a motion?
Motion.
Ashley and Gary. You guys are too quick for me today. Any questions? Please call roll.
Weaver,
Abstain.
Kepley,
Yes.
Overton. Yes. Braun,
Yes.
Hedges,
Yes.
Scanlon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 6, reports and recommendations of the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, Dr. Hill.
Thank you. No action today, but excited to come to the board and share a vision for expanded youth sports programming in Mattoon schools. So today's just to kind of explain a vision and talk about some timelines, get some feedback, answer any questions, and kind of share some preliminary work that's been done. So what are youth sports? For the purpose of today's presentation and for what we're going to describe as youth sports moving forward, we're talking about students in grades 4, 5, and 6. And in terms of sports, we're considering any programming for which we have an IHSA recognized varsity sport. So youth sports is, like we've heard, $1 billion industry, and we're going to try to narrow it down. We're looking at kids from about ages 9 through 12. And we're looking at programs that we already have a culminating activity for in our district. So why do we want to talk with you today about youth sports? We feel like it's important to connect anything we're doing to our larger why. So first of all, the board has been really supportive in expanding opportunities for all kids. So this falls in line with that. There's also a lot of great research around the benefits of youth sports and belonging to sporting events and teams for our youth. We've linked some research in here. That's the last slide that the board can review if they'd like. But specifically, improved health and physical development along with an increased sense of belonging for students who participate, positive social development, increased positive behavior, and ultimately we see increased academic results as well for students who have sustained participation in youth sports or team activities. So the board has also supported that programmatic success results from alignment. So starting things early that align with what we're going to ask our varsity athletes to do, and also from early access. When kids get involved in something young and they find success and they find a space to belong, they tend to stick with that longer. So that will result in overall programmatic benefit. And we also believe, and Mr. Stewart's done a great job of cultivating this at the high school, we believe in that value of students serving others. And we think there's an opportunity here for our high schoolers to partner with our younger students. Finally, and this has really been a guiding principle, Tim and I have talked about this with multiple programs and multiple visionary points. We really believe in equitable access. So it's important to note that in Mattoon, there is a strong support for sports. We've got a YMCA that does a great job. We have a lot of travel teams and competitive teams. But we believe really that equitable access for all and finding a way to help all students have the opportunity really will provide these benefits for everyone, regardless of what they're able to do outside of school. So all that to be said, all of those guiding belief statements led us to do some preliminary work that we wanted to come to the board and share. So in March, we had a small team of people come together and based on some feedback we've heard in the community and some needs assessments, we talked about what could sports participation look like if we expanded it. What's it look like right now? Where are there gaps? And what could the school do to kind of fill that gap? And how could we serve students and families? In April, we surveyed students and their parents. Thanks to Mr. Arnold, he put together an interest survey, and then our principals, our elementary and middle school administrative staff sent that survey out. That helped us get a good idea of what people really want. In May, we reviewed those results with the relevant administrative staff. In June, we started thinking about feasibility. What could this look like? What might it do for our programmatic costs, our overall budget? Logistically, what can we support? What do we have the capacity to do? And so we had some early feasibility conversations there. Today, we're going to share the results of that those feasibility studies with you and see kind of where you'd like us to take it from here. When we surveyed students, we had 191 participants. 54% of those were girls, and 88 students were boys, or 46%. A large majority of them were fourth graders. As you can see, almost 59% of our youngest were like, yes, I want to answer the questions. Our kids are getting used to Google surveys. They've done these a time or two. Their preferences, the top two preferences were basketball. 36% of the students who responded to their survey said priority sport would be basketball and soccer. 31% of the students surveyed said that they would want to participate in soccer. The timing preference. So we asked a question around, if you were to participate in sports, what would work best for you? Would you want to practice in the morning, right after school, evening? Timing preference was overwhelmingly after school. Students wanted to practice right at the end of the school day, which is great for us in terms of equitable access. We have them there already, and it's great for parents too, because there's not that running kids one more time. So that was the preference, and that was the information we got from our students. We asked similar questions to families, and as you can see here, this is the distribution of school response. So we had about a third of responses from Riddle, a third from Williams, and about a third from the middle school, with a little bit more responses from parents of middle school students. But we had 163 participants, and those responses represented 76 girls and 87 boys. So kind of a half and half there. Interestingly enough, top two sports preferences, basketball and soccer. Yep. Timing preference, once again, after school. So with all of that in mind, we took the student information, the family information, came back to that team of administrators, Mr. Duckett, our high school athletic director, and Mr. Sharp, our middle school athletic director, also participated in those conversations. And we said, what next? what do we want to do with all this information? So what we're hoping to be able to do is come together and finalize a program. So if basketball and soccer are the first and second choices, after school is really what's going to work best, what could that program actually look like? In terms of personnel, what about handbooks? What about schedules, budgets, uniforms, and materials? We've done some preliminary research on this and we have some ideas about how that would work, but before we went too much further, we wanted to get input from the board. And we're also going to meet with coaching staff and MEA representatives to see, this is kind of what we're thinking, what do you guys think? And maybe they'll have some additional insight and ideas. From there, we would love, if the board is warm to the idea, to come with a formal proposal next month. The responses that we got were very positive and also very thank you, because there's not a space for my kid right now to do this kind of thing. And so we feel like if we're able to provide this and we can do that starting in the fall, we would like to do so. So we make a proposal in July and then ask the board to take action in August. And we begin communication with families there the next week, right when school gets ready to start, so we can start our first season in the fall of 2022. So those are the pieces of information we wanted to share today. Again, the board has an electronic version of this, so you're free to reference that research. And this time I'd be happy to take any questions or comments. Erica.
So I love this. And you actually, things that you listed as stuff that you're still working on is everything that I've noted, so that's great. The only question that I have is, do we have other extracurricular activities or clubs for students who won't play basketball or soccer? Or if those things are not there, are those spaces that we are looking at expanding as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. In each of our buildings, there are activities for students that are not just athletic in nature. This was because we don't have anything in that 4th, 5th, 6th grade that is athletic in nature, that's school-based. But yes, our principals can probably speak specifically to that, but we do have clubs and activities for students for whom sports isn't their first choice. The other sport that's not up here that we've tossed around the idea, track and field was another one that came up. That could potentially be just a short 2-week practice with an event at our high school facility in the middle of the day, kind of a field day. Many of us reflected fondly on our elementary days where you got to go to the high school track and run the 100-meter dash. And so that came up high as something the kids were interested in too. So yes, to that question about other opportunities, there are other opportunities. And 6th graders specifically can participate in things at the middle school. There are more things for them to participate in. But we found that basketball, there's kind of a dead zone for that, and for soccer, certainly. We don't yet have a competitive soccer team at the middle school level. So, thank you. Yeah, good question. Michelle?
I remember years, I'm going way back, when they had 5th and 6th grade basketball at the elementary buildings, when it was Hawthorne and all of those different buildings. I don't know if anybody else remembers, but
That came up when we met. And well, you guys might remember the comments that we got as we were sorting through this and kind of researching. It was like, oh, we loved it whenever 5th grade at Hawthorne could play. You know, they got to play each other. So part of our initial design has been around practices Monday through Thursday, and then like a competitive event on a Friday, so that, you know, it's kind of the Riddle Williams or this team, East West team, whatever, getting a chance for some competitive play.
yeah, I was just I mean, I think this is awesome, but I was just remembering way back how much fun we had going to watch the girls play at that time. I know they had boys too, but I mean, I remember going for Franklin and Hawthorne.
Yeah.
We cranked out some good athletes too, though, as a result. The High brothers, Willie and Robert.
And it's the programmatic alignment, right? Like if your varsity coach knows kind of the fundamental skills or the plays they're going to run, and then those fundamentals can go all the way down. It just helps with alignment.
And my question too, I do remember that there has been conflict as our children have aged. That really, I would hope that the varsity coach would be the director, not necessarily hands-on, but by God, this is what I want them to know when they get to me, and
It goes all the way
we don't
up.
want anybody going rogue on us. You know?
And that, what's been really nice, Susie, to that point is the initial team of people that came together represented all of those levels. And, with Mr. Duckett being at the high school and then Mr. Sharp at the middle school, those are the kinds of conversations we've been having that we'll present formally in July, just around how is this coordinated and who's in charge of that? And then what role do each of our coaches and our players have for those teams?
So Christy kind of alluded a little bit to this about there's been some conversations within the community that have also kind of spawned, the direction of this. But I think to kind of articulate where things once were when we had programs in basketball intramurally, that the evolution of that has kind of come to this point now where we feel like we can offer more for our students where we did at one time. So the nice part about this is that this is not to be seen as in competition with what our local YMCA, who is extremely supportive of youth development and youth sport. They see this as complementary to what they're offering because they see this gap where students start to fall off at age 9 and 10, and this is where we'd like to help and be able to come alongside and continue that continuity.
And to that point, we wanted to recognize we've had some outstanding volunteers in our community who at times have picked this up. But in terms of just systems, organization, and management, and the amount of time it takes for a parent volunteer to coordinate all that, the resources and the budget, we've had so many people willing to give of time and their talents to do that. But we feel like we can come alongside those people and then make it sustainable so that even whenever their children grow up and they're no longer, able to provide that same level of time, that the services and opportunities are still there for kids.
So this is gonna be, we're not gonna play other school districts. It's just gonna be within our district.
Yeah, the focus would absolutely be skill development, character development, sense of belonging, and developing a love for the sport and for being on a team. It wouldn't be necessarily competitive. They'd still get a chance for some games, right? But we wouldn't be like traveling around until we get to middle school, and that's the time for middle school sport to kind of have that opportunity to shine. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We don't have any recommendations from you at this time. Other district personnel, blah, blah, blah. I do want to mention that Josh Oakley, a Matthew High School graduate, has just been appointed and will be the new Eastern Illinois soccer coach, head soccer coach. He grew up through the ranks of all the kids stuff, all the way up. And so he's one of our own that's going to be over there. Very happy to hear that.
I think his father started.
He did, Tom Oakley, they're my neighbors.
Yes.
Okay, item 11. 11.1, need to go into executive session at 12:35 to discuss matters pertaining to the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. I need a motion and a second by Erica.
Second.
Would you please call roll?
Good, second by Ashley.
Yes.
Okay. Kathleen?
Yes.
Overton?
Yes.
Braun?
Yes.
Hedges?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Scanlon?
Yes. Thank you.
We'll have executive session in here. I'd say we reconvene about 5. There's some sandwiches out here for the board and for the administrators, so that anyone else that's in the